Look, I already know what you're thinking. The graphics are outdated, tank controls are horrible, it's not scary, the list goes on. If you've honestly tried a classic survival horror game, fixed camera and all, and hated it, then you can stop the video here. But if you've never given them a chance, and made up your mind based on YouTube videos or shallow reasons like the graphics, this video is for you. There are two major reasons you should play the original RE3. 1. It's a great game from a long-dead genre that everyone should experience once. And 2. Playing the original version of a game gives you a newfound appreciation for the technological advances in the last couple decades, or resentment for modern gaming if the remake is worse than the original. Unlike modern Hollywood, the gaming industry has a history of great remakes, most of which at least match the original in quality, if not surpass it. Let's be clear, remakes, not remasters. Games like Super Mario 64 DS, Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, and Metroid Zero Mission, not the countless ports labeled with a marketing term. The Resident Evil franchise has had two great remakes already, though with a completely different design approach in each one. The Resident Evil 1 remake surpasses the original in every conceivable way, basically replacing it completely. For the last 15 years, there's been very little reason to play the first RE. Whereas with RE2, the remake was actually a reimagining, featuring a new, sort of hybrid style of action and survival to try and find a happy medium to please both sides of the fanbase. I'm glad to say that it's an amazing game, being both a critical success and my personal Game of the Year 2019. But because they changed the game so much, the original is still worth playing to this day. And the same goes for Resident Evil 3. Just based on the trailers, demo, and gameplay articles that have released, it's clear the remake will differ even more from the original than the RE2 remake did. And the only way to properly appreciate the loving references or criticize the drastic changes is to play RE3 Nemesis and see why fans loved it back in 1999.
Resident Evil.
One of the biggest topics of discussion in the Resident Evil fandom is when the franchise started to lose its way. The most frequent culprit is Resident Evil 4, which most sane fans will agree that it's an excellent game, but it wasn't a great Resident Evil game. These days, describing something as a Resident Evil game could mean a number of things, but back in 2005 it was a big deal. Resident Evil 5 caused even more controversy, easily being one of the most over-hated games of all time. While it certainly was a significant departure from survival horror, it's still a great action game. Then there was Resident Evil 6, which was a giant turd no matter which side of the fence you were on. But there's a small section of the fanbase that admits that every game after the first slowly added more and more action, and that the genre change was inevitable. I just played Resident Evil 2 again recently, and I had 40 Magnum rounds by the end of the game. That's enough to kill the final boss twice. Each entry added more enemies to kill and less reasons to avoid them. If you wonder where I stand on this whole issue, I'd say the action slant started with 3. And I don't even think that's a bad thing. It just means that the developers have to find new ways to scare people and create stronger enemies that can soak up your pocket arsenal. Of course, that's where Nemesis comes in. Nemesis is the single greatest addition Capcom ever made to the classic formula, and it's sad that it took until the RE2 remake to recapture some of that magic with the beefed up Mr. X. Though Nemesis puts the persistent tyrant to shame by being an unstoppable monster with superior speed, health, and firepower compared to the older models. But obviously, the reason he stuck in everyone's minds for all these years was the fact that he could chase you through multiple rooms. It doesn't sound that impressive now, but 20 years ago we never saw that coming. Even playing it now, it's incredibly tense whenever his theme plays because you know he could pop up at any moment. So on top of Nemesis being both terrifying and innovative, there's also a cool incentive to actually fight him. Should you actually KO him outside of the mandatory boss fights, he drops powerful unique items each time, including 2 new guns, a case that can hold 3 first aid sprays, and if you kill him 7 times, you get infinite ammo for 1 gun of your choosing. The only inherent problem with this system is that if you decide to fight Nemesis even once, you should try to kill him at least 5 times, if not all 7. Otherwise you can get stuck with half of a shotgun and major blue balls. Not to mention you'll kill your ranking with the buckets of first aid spray that you have to douse yourself with. The difficulty with fighting him early on is that you don't have any proper tools to take him down. Unless you've mastered the dodge mechanic, an addition much improved in the Revelations games, he's going to beat the shit out of you. Crafting freeze rounds is your best bet against him, and you can't even make them until the 3rd encounter. Even if you decide to run from him every time, it's pretty hard to avoid getting decked. Not only does he run faster than you, but he can also grab you and toss you to the ground, and if you don't get up quickly enough, he'll pierce your skull with his hand tentacle. Nemesis is also smart enough to use a rocket launcher, which, amazingly, Jill can take a rocket to the face like a champ. I guess you could say the monster is truly a fitting nemesis for Jill Valentine.
You stink!
Other than Nemesis, the 2 mechanics that separate RE3 from the rest of the classic games are the aforementioned emergency dodge and gunpowder. The dodge is kind of a mixed bag because although it adds a layer of skill that the old games lack, it's context sensitive, meaning you can only dodge right before you get hit, and it's tied to the same button as aiming and shooting. So not only is it clunky, but sometimes you just want to shoot instead of dodge and you don't get a choice. But honestly, the worst part is that it gives the devs an excuse to make dickish enemy placements like 3 zombie dogs in a hallway or 2 hunter betas in a small room. The hunters attack so quickly that you can dodge them 3 times in a row before you get a chance to counterattack. Which looks badass on my end, but I was freaking out the whole time. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit! The gunpowder mechanic is a pretty cool idea, but could use better execution. Being able to craft any type of ammo you want is great, but special grenades and magnum ammo require a lot of gunpowder, meaning if you want boss-killing firepower, you might not have anything left for the dozens of zombies littered throughout the city streets, which can be pretty punishing for first-time players, but highly rewarding on a second playthrough. I'd say just avoid crafting standard grenades and flame rounds. Acid and freeze grenades give more bang for your buck against Nemesis, and magnum bullets should be reserved for after the clock tower. Make sure to save some shotgun ammo for the mobs, and you should be good to go. The segment where you play as Carlos is a nice change of pace because you don't have to worry about ammo management for once. He basically just mows down everything with his M4. It's a shame that once again, it took until the RE2 remake to give the gunpowder mechanic another shot, albeit a lot more simplified. Another departure from the series was the level progression. Instead of exploring a mansion, police station, or prison island, eventually culminating in a showdown in a secret laboratory, you explore the various streets and buildings of Raccoon City for most of the game. As a result, the setting feels more grounded, yet strangely surreal at the same time because of the various alleyways and narrow streets connecting the map. This hybrid Japanese Midwestern American town design makes even what should be an open map feel claustrophobic and a bit easier to navigate than you would think. And of course, in typical Resident Evil fashion, there are puzzles, which makes absolutely no sense this time around, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Though the Goddess of Time puzzle is a pain in the ass. Once you get to the clock tower, the game gets a lot more linear, but after the crazy amount of backtracking in the city, I welcome it with open arms. The clock tower is another one of those iconic Resident Evil settings like the Spencer Mansion and Police Station, even if it's kind of short. Partly due to the excellent music and ambience, partly because of the awesome showdowns with Nemesis. It feels like a small slice of Resident Evil 1 melded in to add a more traditional feel to the game. Since Resident Evil 3 was originally intended to just be a spin-off, the game features less overall content than the rest of the series. No B scenario, no bonus modes except mercenaries. So to add a bit of replayability, there are several moments in the game where you have to make a timed decision between two choices, sort of a proto-QuickTime event called Live Selection Mode. I wish I could say that they're branching paths, but only a few of them have a significant effect on gameplay. Two of them give you a free KO on Nemesis, so those are clearly the better choices, and the final one on the bridge changes up the ending for no discernible reason. Ultimately, the live selection mode feels incredibly half-baked. Because of the city setting, Capcom decided to double the enemy count from RE2, which already doubled the enemy count from RE1. So you can begin to see why I think the slippery slope to action horror began with 3. Killing upwards of 100 zombies with at least 6 handgun shots each can really slow down the pacing. At least it makes you appreciate the shotgun. Some of this repetition wouldn't be so bad if the devs had thrown in a bit more enemy variety. The lickers are noticeably absent, I guess because the zombies haven't morphed into them yet at the start. But by the end of the game there should be at least a few in the park or factory. The Hunter Gammas are woefully underused. Depending on your luck, you might only face them once in the entire game. The betas are more common, but they're still relegated to the end of the game. The only variety in the first half is a handful of zombie dogs and a couple of giant flea-looking things called brain suckers. I'll admit that all of this doesn't sound great, but that's why the game leans so heavily on Nemesis. When he's chasing you, other enemies are irrelevant. As I mentioned before, despite taking place in a city, Capcom found a way to shove in a bunch of puzzles, and other than the Goddess of Time one, it's a pretty damn good selection. Most of them don't take longer to solve than a couple of minutes, and they're each unique yet simple to understand. The only other one people seem to have trouble with is the water treatment test. Basically, you have to align the 3 graphs to match the pattern on the bottom. Think of it as basic math. 1 line on the top graph equals 1 on the bottom, and 3 lines between the 3 top graphs equals 3 on the bottom. While it takes a few minutes to match it perfectly, it's really not that difficult, guys. As always with this franchise, the puzzles provide a nice break from the nightmares that await you around every corner. Resident Evil 3 is not the best game in the classic series. Normally, if you ask me which of them you should try first, I'd say the RE1 remake. But with the new remake about to come out, there's never going to be a better time to play it. It's still a great game, arguably the last great classic RE game excluding remakes. There's never been an adversary like Nemesis since. No, the Ustanok doesn't count. Playing the original will increase your appreciation or disappointment for the remake substantially. Every reference will put a smile on your face, and every exclusion will frustrate and confuse you. While I have renewed faith in Capcom after the excellent RE7 and last year's RE2 remake, they can't be trusted. They have a reputation for disappointing sequels and horrible DLC practices, though my hopes are still high after playing the demo. Nemesis's redesign looks fantastic, and he kicked my ass in the short showdown at the end. The return of the dodge mechanic is welcome as well, even if it feels like Revelation 2's animations were just slapped on. So, they can't possibly fuck this up, right? Right? Wait, they cut out mercenaries? They cut out the clock tower? Nemesis barely shows up? Oh no.
Oh no! Oh no!
Well, here's hoping game journalists are just clickbaiting again. Wouldn't put it past them. But no clock tower, are you kidding me? Well, if you liked the video, give it a like. If you didn't, you know what to do. What are your favorite Resident Evil games? Tell me in the comments below. I'll see you guys next week, probably talking about how much of a disappointment RE3 was. See you next time, guys.